We're jam. Thank you. All right, well, welcome, y'all. I haven't seen y'all in a long time. How y'all doing out there? Well, welcome to the final episode of season 4 of Table Topics. I've had some special guests these last 2 Table Topics. So what a fun way to end with our chancellor here with us today. But if you haven't joined us before, or for those of you that have been watching in or you come for Table Topics, it's an opportunity for us to get to know our colleagues, the people behind the work, because we are so much more than our work. Is that right? Are we so much more than our work? Yes, all right. So as you think about just thinking about having a new chancellor, having a new leader, and really thinking about our values, having that courage, compassion, joy, and saying yes. He said yes with so much compassion and joy. And he said, I have the courage to answer the questions that you're going to ask me today. And I told him, if y'all know me, I always maybe kind of sort of have a zinger question that I don't share ahead of time. And I'm going to call him Russell. I don't usually call him Russell.
She has a really hard time with that.
I do. I just feel like, you're my boss's boss. I should be calling you Dr. Larry Hart. So that will come out a lot, but I will call him Russell for y'all just for today. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So, of course, it brings me great joy to be able to have this moment, this whole hour with you. And it's so hard to get that time with you. I know you're busy, so thank you so much
thank
for
you,
scheduling
Oprah.
this time.
Shasta,
oh, thank you
so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, I saw that in me. You've kind of centered us around love with everything that you do. But before I learn more about that concept of love with you, I want to just kind of introduce you as that person that was, before you came here, you were a leader at another college where you were a co-winner of the Aspen Prize, and y'all did a lot of amazing work. And I'm excited for what your leadership will bring to ACC. But my first real question, I want to know more about young Russell.
You really don't.
Do it again. I want to know more about young Russell. Okay, great. And so when you think about young Russell, you've been with us for 9 months. Tell me a little bit more about what did you enjoy doing?
So young Russell was really young Rusty. Yeah, and I had a little brother named Dusty, and our last name was Hart. Rusty and Dusty Hart. Imagine the torture on the school bus
Shasta,
on the way home.
I want to pa. You want
to. So it was Rusty. I grew up out in the country. Out in the middle of nowhere. I went to a really small school. There were 11 people in my class. Say again? In Texas, outside of Lubbock, Texas, this little place called Wilson. I graduated from Slayton. It was the big city that had 80 people in the graduating class.
Oh.
But I grew up out in the country, and I did everything. Like when you go to a really small school, like I was the drum major and I played football, and I was the drum major at halftime in your football uniform. You played every sport. You showed animals and did FHA. You were in the one-act play and ran track. Yeah. This right here ran track. And so I was just really involved, and school was a safe place for me because my home wasn't. And so I think school just became my identity because it's a place that I felt like I was safe.
So, and just thinking about being safe, so in those times as young Rusty, who did you want to be? What did you want to do when you grew up? Like, what were you thinking about when you were like that safe space and being everything at school? What did you enjoy doing?
Well, because school was such an important part of my life, I think I always wanted to be a teacher. But the other career that I talked about all the time is I wanted to be a sportscaster. I love sports and still obsessed with sports. And
so at home, like when the games are playing, do you like put it on mute and?
No, I don't.
Okay, just thought
I commentate in my head.
Got
I don't inflict it on other people out loud. Yeah, I always I wanted to be I wanted to be a teacher because teachers had had such a huge influence on me, and that really never changed. The application of it shifted significantly, but I always just envisioned that I would be in a learning environment.
So, in just thinking about the influence teachers had on you, did you ever think that you would be a college president or chancellor?
Not once. Not once. Even, um, yeah, no. Even as a faculty member, um, it just wasn't something that I don't know that you wake up and aspire to these positions. Um, I think the leaders that have had the biggest impact on me were ambitious for impact, not title or position. And I was always one that wanted to make a difference and wanted to help and care deeply. And I never worried about career path. Just being in places of help and having impact created career paths for me that I never would have imagined.
So, so let's lean into that for a moment. Who inspired young Russell?
I can tell you, we don't have enough time to talk about the teachers, but in seventh grade, Mrs. Hamilton taught English in seventh grade when there are 11 people in your class. You get really familiar, and it was the first time I'd ever journaled, and I had written about my family situation, and that became a way for me to process my experience. But it was through dialogue with Mrs. Hamilton that I realized that what I was experiencing wasn't necessarily the norm, that I could have a better life than what I was having, that what I was experiencing wasn't normal. But she only gave me 98s on my journals. I'm still traumatized by that.
Like I told you all this,
Right. I told you I bared my soul and spelled everything correctly,
and you got a 98.
and I got a 98.
Oh my God. I was literally gonna
I
lean
know
into
y'all
that
wouldn't be in the
more.
room if you didn't feel that on some level too, right?
Like I literally was gonna lean into that, and then about Miss Hamilton, and then he went to his 98. So, so what were the characteristics of Miss Hamilton?
Um, she wasn't a warm and fuzzy. She asked really good questions. She structured the classroom where the assignments were challenging and and inspired. Like we read The Hounds of the Baskervilles. Not a what the heck? Why are we reading that in seventh grade, right? But we each had to build the castle at home and then bring it to school. Like and and connecting the tactile, the emotional, the intellectual through the learning process really opened up a new world to me that I'm like, this is what teachers do, and she did that for me, and it was really powerful.
What would you want to tell Miss Hamilton if she was here?
Well, I've told her multiple times in my life because, and I'll just tell you what I told her. I don't think, and you all live this, right? You never know when you're advising a student or opening a door for a student or helping them fill out the FAFSA or helping them find a tutor. You don't often know how powerful your yes and your joy and your courage and your compassion are. And it was really important to me that Miss Hamilton knew that she changed my life. And so I was able to tell her in multiple times before she passed.
Oh, that's good to know. I think when you think about being able to share that and give those flowers to someone that has been so meaningful in your life, it means a lot. So, in knowing all of that and having that great just hero in your life, as someone
Yeah.
that really brought the best out of you and allowed you to see that this isn't normal, and it's okay for you to
Yeah.
share, even with your 98. Um, what was the defining moment to let you know that being a president or chancellor, that you were ready for that journey?
Um, So it was, I don't think I knew I was ready. Even when I got the job as president at Amarillo College, I didn't think I was ready. Um, and then I proved it. Like my first year in the role, I was terrible. I was a terrible leader. I was trying too hard to be leaderly and decision making um, and try to fill the position of president instead of uh, understanding what leadership really is and managing budgets and defining policies and processes is not leadership. That's just management. And I inherited a situation where, and I've talked about this in a town hall, where in the last day of the legislative session, they changed the state formula for funding, and Amarillo College lost $4 million when we were only expecting to lose 300,000. We had a newly elected board of trustees who were asking all kinds of questions about projections that had never been asked before. And when they got the budget projections that said we were projected in 5 years to be $10 million in the hole annually, and that the trustees were not going to raise taxes or tuition. And I'm faced with a scenario where I had to think what the long-term opportunities were to save the institution, and 84% of our budget were personnel. We could have cut the rest, and it wouldn't have made up for the structural budget deficit. We had to eliminate positions, and in that process, initially wanted to feel real sorry for myself because it's painful. Especially when you've grown up in that community and these are people that you love and care about, and your kids go to school together and they've been on teams that you coached and all of those things. And so I realized in that moment that that leadership and decision making are not the same thing. I could have made all the decisions to eliminate personnel, and I could have protected the people affected by it, or I could lead the institution through it where we could survive on the back end. And so we just tried to find really humane ways to do that. We did retirement incentives. We did all kinds of budget analysis. We eliminated 12% of the entire employee base. That affected 5 people that lost their job. I still think about those 5 people. They're all in good places right now, by the way. They have good jobs. And it required 104 people to take the retirement incentive. And so in that moment, 1,274 years of service to the college walked out the door, and the rest of us were standing here, and people were needing to know from me the what and the how. But we couldn't get there until I realized that we had to explain the why we were here, and how we weren't going to ever be here again, and that was the moment that leadership changed for me. That leadership isn't about positional authority. It's not about titles. It's not about offices. It's not about parking spaces. It's about caring for and loving people to success. And the only way we could save ourselves in Amarillo was to dramatically improve student outcomes. Because unlike here, there were not a lot of people moving into the Texas Panhandle. They were projected for population shrinkage, not population growth. And the only way that Amarillo would survive financially is if we were better at keeping the students that we had. There weren't students to replace the ones we were losing, and we were losing students really dramatically, and we had to do better. And it became not just our moral obligation, it became our financial salvation to get that figured out.
Before we move on and talk a little bit about now that you are here at Austin Community College, what do you think going through that time at Amarillo? What What do you think your colleagues there would say about just your courage through that whole process?
Well, I think initially they would say I screwed it up before I figured it out, and I've shared this with some of you. The biggest mistake that I made, and I think you can see the evidence of what I learned there and my mistakes and what we're trying to do here, is that I would have these meetings similar to this, and I had leading up to the budget cuts. And I had these PowerPoints, and it said, enrollment has gone this way, but our hiring has gone this way. And I was really proud of my courage for showing the data and like, here, you know, like enrollment's tanked and hiring's gone this way, and funding, state funding has gone this way, and tax valuations have gone this way. Like, it's not a sustainable system. And I've talked about being transparent, and you've heard me talk here about being transparent. But I was transparent in a performative way. I would stand on a stage and I would show the PowerPoints, and then I didn't have the courage to look people in the eye and say, when Shasta's looking at me like, am I going to have a job? And I didn't know if you were going to have a job. And so of looking you in the eye and saying I didn't know, I just ran. I'm like, I hid behind emails, I hid behind messages, and it took a really courageous person. Her name's Edie Carter. She's an incredible soul. And we had the moment where I had all hands meeting, and I stood in front of the college and I said, it's over. The cuts are done. If you're in the room, you're a part of the future of the college. We did it. And I was dumb enough to think that people would actually applaud. And they met me with tears. And Edie was like, I know who you are, Russell. You're better than this. And that's when I had the realization that I had mistaken information for communication. And so I had to take the next year, and I had to genuinely, authentically apologize, explain why I didn't have the courage. And I went to every department and said, I'm sorry. Here's what I'm sorry for. What are your ideas? How can we never be here again? And they had the courage to forgive me and to buy into what we created. And so when people look at the Amarillo story and the Aspen Prize, they look at love, and they look at poverty initiatives, and they look at 8 weeks, and they look at tutoring, but they don't know the pain that it took to get there.
It's like that, is it the avalanche or the iceberg?
Iceberg,
Everybody only
yeah.
sees the top, they don't see all.
And so when I've come here with all the lessons that I've learned, and I hear you all reflect your fears and concerns to me, and I want to honor them and understand them, and I've tried to demonstrate an authentic dialogue with each other. That's been really important to me, as honoring the colleagues that helped me be a better leader in Amarillo. But I will say that the challenge I've had here is when I hear you talk about your fears and concerns, and they're important, please don't hear me, I'm not minimizing them, but our fears here are not about losing our jobs and not about losing salary. And so I think context is harder for me here than it was in Amarillo, because there it was scarier than it is to talk about the changes here. Although this college hasn't had to make a tough financial decision in over a decade, and so fear and pain looks differently here. It doesn't minimize it. Yeah. But I want you to have context for how I'm receiving your pain, and I'm having to make sense of it based on my own lived experience.
You know, one of the things that happened in one of our town halls was, I think when you were first talking about free tuition, and someone mentioned the article from Amarillo.
Oh, yeah.
And this is my segue into now that you're here at ACC, because I know they're like Shasta, we all got on purple. But what I appreciated and loved most was your head-on response to, sure, you can throw up something from the past, but I'm going to be open and honest about, yes, that was not a good time and fun time.
Awful.
But I think you meeting it head on where sometimes those things can be perceived as, well, respond to this, and this is what I found on you. You flipped it and said, I'm not gonna let you pull me into that. I'm just gonna go straight forward and talk about, yeah, it's public, this is what happened, and this is what we had to do about it, and it's lessons learned. That's what leaders do.
Well, well, thank you for that. I think the challenge that we all have as colleagues, right, is when you receive that message and they're like, well, what about Amarillo? Your choice is to be defensive about it, or to be authentically and honest about it. I didn't have anything to hide. And the environment that I'm wanting us to co-create with each other is that we're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to learn from and with each other, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to acknowledge them and apologize for them when I'm aware of them. And if I've made a mistake and I'm not aware of it, I need you to tell me. That's what courage, compassion, joy, and yes looks like. That's what authentic leadership is. And it's not positional title authority. It is relational authority, and you all have it. We just have to build enough trust with each other that we can use it effectively rather than weaponize it.
Yeah. When you looked at ACC, one of the statements I think that many of us heard was your excitement about coming to a college of our size because of the ability of an institution of this size to be great contributors to the community it serves. Are you still excited about that, and what does that mean? You know, wait, people started laughing. Are you still
right? Have we beat it out of you yet, Rusty? I'm more excited today than I was last month or in the beginning, and what you all don't understand, because for most of you don't understand, when the majority of your career or all of your career is spent here, we have resources to do magical things that can change higher education for the entire country. But we can't do that if we only think about our responsibility to our title or our office and not to our students, our community, and each other as a whole. And I am excited because we have resources to do it all right. And part of the reason I wanted to come here is that we have resources to do free tuition, to do an affordability scholarship, where the students can learn on the latest equipment and technology, and we have access to companies that are doing innovative things that are redefining how we live our lives. And in Amarillo, I was having to create experiences and venues to have access to those things. And here we don't have to do that. We just have to be thoughtful in honoring the resources we have and placing students in the center of them.
As we think about students, you know, you had someone in your life at a young age for young Rusty that allowed you to express the experiences that you were having and allowing school to be a place where you could be anything you could imagine, right? Yeah. And I think about one of our spotlights before in Morty, where he talked about, you know, going to the epicenter of, you know, disaster. But it was the stories people told, and why he wanted this particular position because of the stories our students tell. So what does it mean to you as you think about making sure our students are the center of our work and that they have voice and advocacy to be able to be their best selves?
Our students and their experience is our purpose. And what I worry about in higher education, I'm not saying I worry about it here, although I have concerns about it here, because I think we reflect every higher education entity, is when our bureaucracies place student as an annoyance, not the center. When we create rules and processes and structure because it helps us have psychological safety in how we engage each other, and the student's not the center of it. And every organization and every office are going to have conflicts and struggles, and the definition of an institution that's transformative and world-class looks at things from an end user perspective. How are students receiving us? Not how do we want students to receive us to make our jobs easier. The greatest thing that I've learned in my own pathway is that when we become servant leaders, when we become service-oriented, when our work is to serve the people and the students around us, you know what happens? You actually enjoy your work more, and we actually get better at our jobs, which gives us more resources to pay more, to do more, to create more.
As you were able to work with students and listen to their voices in terms of tell us what you feel our values are, encourage compassion, joy, and yes. As you think about and reflect on what they shared in those moments that you had with them, which one of those values sticks out most to you and why? And through that, what does that mean in terms of your expectations of us? And I know you probably don't like that word expectation, but still, it's the word I
like
got on a Friday.
expectation.
Okay.
I like
Okay,
expectation.
so which one of the values stands out most to you, and what does that mean in terms of your expectations for us as your colleagues?
I'm really proud of the students and the way they created all four of those values. The value that I think is most challenging for us is the value of joy. In my conversations with you all in the 9 months that I've been here, I think we have created a culture of anticipation of the bad happening rather than an expectation that I'm going to get the best of everyone that I engage with. And our students feel that. They feel your stress with each other. They feel the lack of alignment between divisions. They feel it. I think the students would tell you the value that resonated the most with them was yes, because they feel like every part of our bureaucracy is a no. And it starts from the parking lot and not even knowing how to find or where to find or what the names of the offices are, because we've structured ourselves, and we ain't any different than just about every other higher education entity, right? We've structured ourselves for ourselves, and we name our offices so that we feel better about the job that we have, and we create organizational structure so that we can feel like I have control of things, and that's human nature. But I think we have an opportunity to be better than that. And so, yes, is the value that our students really dug into. And the last thing I'll say about it, Shasta, is how many times students receive no, even if it's not what we intended. But every time they can't find you, that's a no. They're receiving it as a no. Every time they log onto the website and don't know what a bursar is or what a registrar is and they need to engage, that's a no to them. And these are the students that had the courage to engage with us. They had the courage to engage with us. They have demonstrated to us that they have the skills that they need to be successful. And yet they still struggle to be successful here. And we're going to have an honest conversation over the next 3 years about how we're losing the students that have had the courage to come find us. And there is if we're going to be social justice warriors and we're going to be equity minded, there is a whole part of our community that needs us, and we ain't ready for them. Because one, we don't know who they are, we don't know how to reach out to them, and our bureaucracies aren't set up for them.
So as you think about we're not ready for them and thinking about the theory of change work, it's one of our largest, I think, and most profound initiatives since you've come here in terms of that theory of change and strategic plan with the North Star of 70%, right?
Yeah.
Because it really speaks to the heart of what you're saying. How do we get ready for the students that we don't know who they are, and how do we figure out who they are? How do we think about the yes? Because that's the most profound thing that students are saying, this is what I need from you as the very people I lean on and depend on to get me to a better place in life. So with the design teams in place, how do these initiatives affect how we will go about doing our daily business and differently?
Well, right now, it's not going to affect how you do your daily business at all. Go do your work the way you're currently doing it. The design teams aren't going to stop that or get in the way of it. I think what the design teams fundamentally are going to do in the beginning is to understand it. That'll be their first job, is to understand what we're currently doing and where is its success points and where are its challenges. The shift that I am bringing to this work is to put the power of reimagination in a different place at the college. And I think it's scary for me, scary for you, it's scary for everyone else. The things that I know it's most scary for people that are in leadership management roles. I worry about them the most because if you're in advising, you have your job. You know what it is. Our goal is to make it better. But if you're leading advising, or you're an associate vice chancellor or vice chancellor or an executive dean, what I am bringing to the process is unsettling. By design and also unintentional. And so I just would like to talk about it if I can. So, and I tell Shasta this a lot. I know I'm a lot.
But I am too.
I know I'm a lot.
Together we become one.
But I think the reason that I'm in this role, and the reason I wanted this role and was hired for this role, is that you all have felt and reflected in the 100 days that I started here, that the thing ain't working. It's not working. And we have the resources to make it better. The people that experience the brokenness the most are the people that are on the execution end of all the policies that people in our suite write. And so I'm trying to create an environment where those people get a voice in reimagining how and what we do. At the same time, I am going to be working with the leadership structure over the next 3 years to reimagine what leadership looks like. And I'm starting with what I think is the most, forgive me, because I'm including myself in this, the most important leaders at the college aren't the chancellor and the vice chancellors. The most impactful people are those with titles right below that are vice chancellor, associate vice chancellor, assistant, because that's the group that determines resources. It determines and has the opportunities for integration and for alignment, or it's the group that can determine whether those things don't happen. And I want to work with that group the most. I think when we look back in 5 years and they're making documentaries of us, it'll be because of the work of that group of leaders. And it will be the work that we're going to do over this next year to understand what leading with love actually means, so that when the designs come in, that group is ready to implement with a different understanding of what our roles are. And that's why I say I know I'm a lot, because I don't know other schools that are doing it the way that we're going to do it. But I also know no other schools are effective. And we're going to be the place that unlocks it, and it's going to be that group that unlocks it.
I appreciate you taking that additional time to explain that, because I think from just the standpoint of the things that I think other leaders across the college have shared in those different roles of just, we want to have that ability to lead that supports the college and our students in the best way in our teams. So what does that look like under your leadership? So I'm glad you called it out, and I'm glad you spent some time talking about what that relationship will grow into and be more effective.
What's going to make us effective as an organization is when we understand that leadership is about relationships and people. Management is about processes and structure, and we confuse management and leadership all the time. I'm calling all of you to join me on the leadership journey.
So, because DJ and Tamara keep telling me how much time I have left.
And they know I can't shut up.
No,
so.
they're just, I never do these things on time. We always go over. So I do want to just ask one more question, because then there's another part to this segment that I know everyone wants to hear more about. So tell us a little bit more as we think about the theory of change. Tell us a little bit more about the tri-chairs and that role. What does it entail? I think people are want to know a little bit more about that as we think about theory of change.
Well, I think Dr. Humphrey and Dr. Croft will probably tell you, we're trying to figure that out too, right? I mean, we've had multiple conversations like, when did we do this? Or like, we're trying to figure that out. But ultimately, I think what the tri-chair approach is to ensure that we're honoring the process and the people in the process, not make decisions that we then want these design teams to go do. I think our job is to create the environment that allows, and I'll use advising as an example, because I've had multiple conversations with advisors that are really concerned about the advising design team. And here's the thing, you may not like it, not just advisors, anybody. You have a role in the college, but you don't own advising. You don't own tutoring. You don't own learning. Those are college functions that, if they're going to be effective, the entire college needs to understand and be a part of and support and articulate and know how to connect students to. But it's a deal in higher ed, but it is definitely a deal here that we're so afraid of people from the outside of the process peering into the process. And what I'm saying is, you don't own the process. You're just going to be responsible for executing a process that we all own. And that's what the design teams are going to do, is to help us reimagine what advising looks like for a college, not for an office or a division. And then we'll take it, and the advisors, and I'm using those as an example, will have the most critical role to make sure that it works and to challenge it and ask questions of it. All of those things are going to be possible. But those things don't need to be designed separate of the way students experience the rest of the college. And there's got to be such alignment with social services and careers and tutoring and advising. All of those things have to be wrapped up in a student experience, not things that we tell students to go experience.
So as we think about, since you segued into advising and that start strong, how do we say, do y'all remember how Dr. Humphrey said? All right, right there, Maze, right. And then as we think about enroll full-time, one of those areas under enroll full-time was financial aid and scholarships.
Yeah.
And as you think about another large initiative, that there have been a lot of people college-wide, not just that were on those work groups that have been hard at work. Shout out to those work
For
groups.
sure.
Amazing work. Yeah, go ahead and applaud. It's loud. But as we think about what you spearheaded in that creation of that and giving back, people are talking about free tuition.
Yeah.
They're talking about what it means. I think people are excited. They're anxiously awaiting for the next.
Anxious, yeah.
Yes, they're anxious and they're anxiously awaiting for the next. But what does it mean for you to see these programs like free tuition come to life? Because our first cohort of students will be here tick-tock o'clock soon. So what
Next
does that
month.
mean? How do you envision it to continue working? Because the thing people not just most anxious about, but what does it mean to have free tuition for all?
First of all, let me talk about the process. Because when we brought all the people that are directly involved in some part of the process to make free tuition functional, I mean, at one point there were like 50 people in a room, yeah, at the table.
And I didn't have, and they were sitting in my chair.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I
I know.
own. Right.
I know your chair, which is my favorite chair. This one I knew in the second meeting that we're going to be okay. Because I think the first meeting, everyone was like, brought all the historical trauma about, well, this ain't going to work because that office does this wrong and this office, and everybody thought they got to do it themselves because we don't trust other people. By the second meeting, I saw historical fissures melt. I saw people working across divisions, not just offices, for the greater good of making this work for our students and being excited about these functional relationships. And what I'm calling you all to is that you don't need the chancellor to call you to the table for that to happen. And you shouldn't wait on the chancellor to call you to the table to figure out how to make things better. Call the meeting, go have the lunch, go apologize, go ask questions, go extend the hand. What I saw in that room and continue to see give me so much hope, because while the free tuition may have been specific to an idea, its reality was specific to those people and the teams that they represented in that room, and it wasn't anything about me, and that was the most glorious part of it.
So I have a sentence for you to complete for us.
Okay.
My,
Like I could answer a question in a sentence, please.
Tamara and DJ gonna be on us about this
Okay,
time now.
Tamara.
Okay. So here's the sentence to complete. My vision for ACC is.
That we love our students and each other to success.
And your other sentence is. That went by too quick.
Well, you told me a sentence.
And your other sentence is.
That that sentence lives and breathes in the way that you engage your job every day. And that my true vision is that a year from now, you no longer need town halls with me to define love or priorities or rumor bust, because you all are in such deep work with each other that you already know the answers to the questions. You don't need to ask me what they are. That we're a functional, healthy organization that can challenge each other without personalizing disagreements. That we are an authentic organization that will allow each other to make mistakes, and that we're an organization that will forgive each other when we do. But fundamentally, we're an organization that's unified around loving our students and each other to success, and we know what that means, and we know how to do it, and we're committed to it, and we're not satisfied with a 46% completion rate. We're gonna make 70% real.
I love it. So as we always do, Table Topics first started during the pandemic as shout-outs. So when we changed the name to Table Topics, we still kept the shout-out. So who would you like to shout out?
I want to shout out two people. and they're both students. One is Miles, who's sitting in here in the room.
Hey,
Um,
Miles.
Because I see Miles as an accountability partner, because we talk a lot about our hopes for the college and for students and for himself. Um, and um, and I think he's a lens through which to understand how things are improving or if they're not. And the other is Alicia, who is
And I'm
in,
surprised Alicia's not here.
I know, me too. She is an incredible, she's glue. She glues people together. And there's always accountability. Like, I love me some Alicia, but I know when I talk with her, she's gonna go, I know, love you, Russell, but last time we met, you said ABC, and I only say A and B. I wanna know where C is. That's what
I've been there with her.
right.
Yeah.
That's what a genuine, loving relationship is. We can celebrate what's working, and we hold each other accountable when it's not. But she is glue. She is gluing students and organizations and the college together. And what I hope is that when we watch her do it, we then can understand what our calling is as employees and colleagues. You don't need a title to glue people and processes together.
So I think what's been so amazing about today's Table Topics is we got to learn more about you from just as a young age to understand a little bit more about your why. Because even though you didn't think or ever had imagined you'd be a president or a chancellor, understanding a little bit more about young you, where you were before you came here, and how you will lead here and support tells a lot about character, yours, and your heart. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
But I think that's important, because I think when people can at least see your heart in your work, that even with the mistakes,
They understand our motives are pure.
right? Absolutely.
I'll just say one more. My nickname in high school was Stone Boy.
Was who?
Stone Boy,
Okay.
and it wasn't because I partook.
I wasn't even thinking of it, but now that you brought it up.
I was really tightly wound. Like, I prayed for everyone
I got
that
it.
that did anything against the rules. But my nickname was Stone Boy because the way that I protected myself in that world was to not feel anything. And I got to college, and I had a professor, Luann Seaburn, teaching a communication class, and it built on the things that Mrs. Hamilton and Mrs. Walker and Mrs. Ellis and Mrs. Alexander had created, and allowed me to not be afraid of my feelings, and that I could actually have a life that had joyful feelings, not just numb feelings. And so what you all don't know is, like, the people that I grew up with wouldn't know this chancellor that talks about love and is very emotive and clear on who he is and his fallibilities, because no one knew me. And thank you for creating a safe space where I get to know you and you get to know me. And I just really appreciate that most of all.
I've enjoyed this time with you just because when we talked about my chair in the conference room, I circle around, I sit in a little corner, and he won't let me hide. And I just like my chair over here in this corner in the conference room just because I can see everyone. And then he goes and sits in it. And so so if you see just that banter with us too, you allow me to be honest with you. You allow me to speak my mind, professionally so. And I appreciate that because we grow together with being able to be honest about what we see, and also as we go down this journey together. So I appreciate that. I think, depending on what Tamara and DJ say, that we might have time for a couple of questions. And so just a couple, and that couple might be one depending on the response.
Loud
That
and
was-
clear.
you got-
I heard it loud and clear.
Oh, go ahead.
Aren't y'all sick of hearing from me by now?
So my question is this, if you could give us your top 5 bucket list items that you haven't accomplished yet, or if you've already accomplished everything, can you think of someone on the spot?
And I just want everybody to know that that's going to be the only question, because I can see that's.
I have to say, if when you grow up in Wilson, Texas, population 233, and like bucket list, what is that? And if you would have told Rusty that I would have traveled the world, that I would have met presidents, that I've accomplished everything. The things that have been the most transformative for me, taking students to Poland and taking students to Cambodia were things, and Zambia were things that changed my soul and the way it receives the world. Just the most fun, geeked out thing that I've ever done is 2 years ago, I won a trip and got to go to Wimbledon. And I was the kid growing up, I played tennis against the barn. I had taped out a court, and I played every tournament you could imagine. And I've been a tennis geek my whole life. And when I went to Wimbledon 2 years ago and walked in, I just burst into tears because I never imagined that would happen to me. But I said, once I experienced it, what's left? Now it's just, right? Now it's, I think, creating opportunities for other people to have those experiences.
Absolutely. One, will y'all give Dr. Russell Lowry Hart a big round of applause?
Thank you all.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for opening up and allowing me the moment to dig deep and learn more about Lil Rusty. So I'm excited that I know that that's what they called you. Y'all.
Call me now.
Oh, but I can call you Dr. Rusty.
No. When people call me Rusty, it's from another life, and it usually does not signify joy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But when I call you Dr. Lowry Hart, it still signifies joy.
It signifies that you're uncomfortable with calling me Russell.
Y'all, it has been just it's been great just to laugh and learn and just have this moment with you on a Friday. What a wonderful way to round out the week. Y'all, this is the final episode of season 4. We are taking a bit of a pause and a break before we go into season 5. We want to really think about at getting some feedback from our team in terms of, is it still important? Because if you remember when I first started this job, what was important to the student affairs staff was we want to know each other. We want to love each other better, but sometimes doing that is not just sitting here knowing about what people do, but knowing about them. People are so much more than the work. And so we're gonna take a bit of a pause, get some feedback before we start season 5. But I wanna wish you all the best, hottest summer ever. And as we get ready for the new academic year, Dr. Lowry Hart, Russell, thank you so much for spending this time. Let's kick that music off. Are they back there? Y'all have the best weekend. All right, y'all.